Today we are working on 8.1, the second half of it. So last time we had problems like this. Say I had a 3, 4, 5 triangle and this was A. What would the sine of angle A be? So we use SOHCAHTOA. Sine is O and H, so it'd be 4/5. What would the tangent of A equal? 4/3. Okay. And then we did problems like this. 25 degrees, and we would have x and 10. Which trig ratio would we pick here? So this would be the O side, and this would be the A side. So we choose sine. The sine of 25 is x over 10. Is this a multiply or a switch problem? Multiply. So I would times this by 10, and in my calculator I would type in 10 sine of 25. Ah, good. All right, let's do, so let me set that up. Sine of 25 equals x over 10. Okay, let me change this. Which trig ratio would I pick here? I have A and I want H, so that would be the cosine. So the cosine of 25 is 5/x, and that is a switch problem. So if your variable is on top, then you just multiply to get x by itself. But if your variable is on bottom, then you switch places with the cosine and the x. And we get x is 5 over the cosine of 25. And those are the only two possibilities. X is either on top and you multiply, or x is on bottom and you switch. Does that help? Okay. Well, today we're going to do a new type of problem. What if this is 7 and this is 10? So we're going to use tangent. So this says that the tangent of A is 7/10. Now this is an angle, and this is a ratio. And every time you plug in the same angle, you get the equivalent ratio. Okay? That's what the sine, the cosine, and the tangent buttons in your calculator do. You tell it an angle, and it spits out a ratio. But here, the angle is unknown, and the ratio is known. But there is only one angle that creates that ratio. So there's a second button on your calculator that will help you figure this out. And what you do is you invert this, and we use, instead of the tangent button, we use the inverse button. So the tangent inverse of 7/10 will tell us how big angle A is. So the tangent inverse button is just found by doing second tangent of 7/10. 35 degrees. So what you need to remember is, if you know the angle, then you use the sine, the cosine, and the tangent buttons. If you want to know what the angle is, then you use the inverse buttons. All right. So let's look at this. Here, I want to know how big angle X is. So which ratio should I choose? tangent. And we want to know what the angle is, so we do tangent inverse of 15 over 23, and it spits out the angle 33 degrees. Okay. Which ratio would I choose here? Cosine. Cosine inverse of 7/13 gives me 57 degrees. Okay? So if you know what the angle is, you use sine, cosine, and tangent. If you want to know what the angle is, then you have to use the inverse buttons. Okay. So these problems are going to use angle of elevation or angle of depression or angle of descent. So imagine you're flying in an airplane and you're flying horizontally, and you want to increase your altitude. So the rotation necessary to increase your altitude is called the angle of elevation. And if you're flying straight and you want to land, the angle of depression is the angle created when you rotate down. This is calling it the angle of depression. It's often called the angle of descent. So here's an airplane. It is 189 miles north of the airport, and 118 miles north of the airport and 189 miles east of the airport. What is the necessary angle change to land at the airport? So we want to know how big x is. Which trig ratio should we choose? Tangent. So the tangent inverse of 118, tangent inverse of 118 divided by 189, 32 degrees. Okay. Okay. Here we have a building that casts a shadow, and the angle at the base of the shadow is 64 degrees, and we are 52 feet from the building. How tall is the building? Do I want to use, well, which ratio should we pick here? Sine, cosine, or tangent? This would be a tangent problem. Should I use tangent or should I use tangent inverse? Tangent, because I know what the angle is. So this one is the tangent of 64 is equal to x over 52. Is that a multiply or a switch problem? Multiply. So the answer is just 52 tangent of 64. All right. So you probably want to write this one down. We have SOHCAHTOA. Sine is O over H. Cosine is A over H. So sine of theta is O over H. Cosine of theta is A over H. Tangent of theta is O over A. But those are only half of the possibilities. In the three sides of the triangle, I can create 6 ratios, and those are half of them. What would another ratio be? It's kind of like the inverse. We call it the reciprocal, the upside down version. So H over O. Well, that ratio also has a name. It's not used as often as the sine. And that ratio's name is cosecant. And we abbreviate it CSC. So the CSC, the cosecant, is just the upside down version of the sine. Okay, and then H over A also has a name. It is the secant. and we just abbreviate the secant as SEC. And then A over O is the cotangent okay. So the way I remember this is the partner for sine, which sine does not have a co on it. The partner for sine does have a co. So sine matches up with cosecant. And cosine does have a co, and its partner secant does not. And then tangent matches up with cotangent. It would be really nice if sine and cosine were reciprocals of each other, and secant and cosecant were reciprocals of each other, but that's not how it works. So you need to remember that cosecant matches with sine, secant matches with cosine, and then tangent and cotangent are reciprocals. All right. So I need to know the cosine of theta. So here's theta. Cosine is going to be 3 over 4. Okay. The cotangent of theta is going to be 3 over whatever goes there. So it will be 3 over something. How do I find that number? Pythagorean theorem. So 3 squared plus x squared is equal to 4 squared. So that's 9 plus x squared is equal to 16. We subtract 16, subtract 9. X squared equals 7. And then we take the square root, and this is root 7. So the cotangent would be 3 over the square root of 7. And notice it says give exact values, not decimal approximations. So don't plug the square root of 7 into your calculator. You want your answer to contain root 7. And what would the secant be? Four over 3. So the secant is the upside down version of the cosine. So 4 over 3. Okay. Did everybody write this down or take a picture of it? You didn't even see my cheesy smile. Oh, dang it. And lastly, oh, we don't want to do this one. Never mind. That was the last problem. Okay, get to work.